the 11th Amendment is just an absolute crock of shit. The 11th Amendment, this would be the First Amendment after the Bill of Rights, right? So the Bill of Rights, you got the freedom of speech and right to petition, freedom of religion. You can peacefully assemble, the press, freedom of the press, right to bear arms. And now you have a right of a state to never be sued by you. You have a right to not sue the state that injured you. If a state injures you, you cannot sue them. So thanks a lot, 11th Amendment. Jesus Christ, 1794 America. What the fuck? Thank you. Not, you pieces of shit. So the 11th Amendment, verbatim, okay, I'm going to say it, I'm going to repeat it several times, because just listen to the words. Okay, the 11th Amendment says this: the judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity, commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state, or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity, so no criminal nor civil suits commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. Okay, so this is a total crock of shit. Essentially, the way I would want it to, the foreign, excuse me, if I was to rewrite this, there's one part of it that I'm okay with, the other part I'm not. So the citizens or subjects of any foreign state, does it give us sovereign immunity? I don't know. There might be some international criminal court of justice and maybe that people have. But when it comes to having the rights and freedoms that I have as an American citizen, I don't want Australia suing my state. I don't want, all the Mariana Islands suing, my state. So I'm okay with the whole, citizens or subjects of other states, foreign countries. If you're not in America, if you're not an American and you don't live in America, then you can't sue us if we live here. You can't be over there suing us over here. Like, no, we have to have, you got to be down the road. I mean, that's... So, yeah, the 11th Amendment is a crock of shit because, first of all, in the law itself, it prevents you from suing any other state. So let's say you live in Tennessee. If you live in Tennessee, that means you can't sue New York, you can't sue Oregon, Alaska, Montana, Nevada. You can't sue any other state, no matter what. No matter what. Whether they injure you, whether the state does something to you, whether they're corporations, whether there's poison in the, products, whether they, false advertise, whether, something happens to where the state injures you, you cannot sue that person through federal courts. And that's how else are you going to sue a state? So essentially it leans towards sovereign immunity. It's not sovereign immunity. Because, again, I read it 3 times because it's very clear what the 11th Amendment means. The Supreme Court has, went ahead and they got drunk with their own power, and I worry about their logic skills. So, there's 2 particular groups of people that cannot sue a state. So, if you live in Tennessee, then that means that you will not be sued by anybody who lives in Florida. Your state will not be sued by anyone who lives in Florida. So anybody, it says you cannot have, the judicial power of the United States, so the federal courts cannot extend to any civil or criminal case commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. So, if you're Tennessee, what that means is that the people of Florida and New York and Oregon, they cannot sue Tennessee, the state of Tennessee. They could sue the citizens. They could sue, in fact, the individual state officials, but they can't sue the state of Tennessee. And so the state of Tennessee can't be sued by the citizens of Oregon or of New York or Florida, and the state of Tennessee cannot be sued by the citizens of Canada and Mexico and, Australia and South Africa and Bolivia. So the second part of that makes sense. The first part of that doesn't make any sense. That essentially, if Tennessee, the state, cannot be sued by, any other citizen, that means they can put any injury upon the citizens. This takes power away from the citizens. There's a part of this argument that has to do with states' rights, right? So are American states like Germany and, all those countries over there, or do they have complete autonomy? Because they're in English common law, they had state immunity, but the state immunity on principle, that's some bullshit. Fuck tyranny. So the state doesn't get sovereign immunity as if they are above reproach, as if they could do no wrong. The rule of law says nobody's above the law. And that would include the social construction that is called a nation-state. So let's get into some background information on this. The dissent in the Supreme Court case 1999, Alden v. Maine, is a 5-4 split decision, so they barely decided this damn thing. It's not a very strong decision. Justice David Souter, so David Souter, he wrote for the 4-justice dissent in Alden, and he said that the states surrendered their sovereign immunity when they ratified the Constitution. That's absolutely right, the Constitution. When they ratified it, the Constitution was brought about by state conventions, so that bypasses the state governments. That's the people directly putting this on the ballot, and then the states themselves had ratified it. So the states ratified the Constitution, the state conventions, when they all voted to, become part of America. The people themselves, the state went ahead and ratified the Constitution, so therefore the states surrendered their sovereign immunity. The whole concept of sovereign immunity just shouldn't even be around. It shouldn't even be here. So the 11th Amendment is a crock of shit because it says that it's preventing me from suing Hawaii or Alaska or Montana, no matter what the hell they do. So it leans towards sovereign immunity, but what it does allow is for a citizen to sue their own state. So I'm allowed to sue the state of Colorado. That's, if you read the 11th Amendment, the way that it's, written. And it was written like that for a reason. So they wrote it like that. If they meant to prevent citizens from suing their own state governments, then they would have written that in the amendment. And if they would have done that, then that amendment would never have been passed, because who the fuck, I can't even believe this shit got passed. So if they would have said, all right, citizens of Florida, you can't sue the people of Georgia, you can't sue Georgia, nor can you even sue your own state government of Florida. What do you mean? So that's taking power away from the citizens. They didn't add that part because they didn't want that part in it, because they knew it would fail. And since they admitted that part, you can't assume that, they meant some grandiose idea. Oh, what they really meant was sovereign immunity. If they meant sovereign immunity, they would have said, all states have sovereign immunity. But they didn't say that. They said that all states are going to be free from being sued by the citizens of other states and by the citizens of other countries. So that's what, the 11th Amendment was about. But it wasn't meant for the citizens to be prevented from suing their own state. Of course you can sue your own state. Of course you can. The state injures you, that's one possible remedy among many, possibilities of what could happen. So if the state, I don't know, say a state road worker was driving crazily in his truck and he runs over your grandmother and breaks both of her legs, you're saying they can't sue the state of Colorado? They provided the road worker's just, driving crazily. He was drunk, right? So he's just allowed to, they get sovereign immunity. They're allowed to run over my grandmother and break her legs and essentially get away with it. I'm not allowed to sue. There's some exceptions, so I'll get to the exceptions, but I just want to make it clear that the 11th Amendment is a crock of shit. The 11th Amendment is a total crock of shit. So the reason why they omitted that part is because that part wouldn't have been voted for, and that's not what they meant. So just take it, by the very words. The very word says that it doesn't omit that citizens can sue the state, so I would assume that that would actually imply that they are allowed to sue the state. Now, there's several exceptions. So the Supreme Court has fucked this shit up. The Supreme Court has essentially declared that the 11th Amendment is immunity. It gives immunity to the states, so they get state immunity. This is an English common law thing, so this is, some archaic shit. This is from the ancient regimes. So you got the state immunity. The 11th Amendment is essentially the way the SCOTUS in the recent rulings, they've ruled that they have state immunity. The 11th Amendment immunity means that the states have state immunity, which means nobody can sue them, so fuck the fuck off. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck up out of Dodge. Yeah, your grandma got run over by some road workers. What do you want me to do? Cry about it? What are you going to do, cry? So there's 9 recognized exceptions to the ban on lawsuits against states. So I'm going to keep up with this. If a road worker runs over your grandma and breaks her legs, they can apologize and they can give you restitution right then and there. That's what they should do, right? They broke their legs. It's clearly his fault. He's drunk. Or they could just protect themselves from liability, tell that guy to shut up, put him on administrative leave, get him on a paid vacation, get him lawyered up, and then, basically fight this poor old lady who got ran over in court, with all your money, with all your fancy lawyer, and, hopefully get out on some technical, some technicality. Maybe, hell, might pass away before the end of the case, and then you had to have paid nothing, right? So that's a victory. So if that's me, right, my grandmother's getting run over, and the state is the one that did it, well, what can I do? I'm not allowed to sue the state. That's what SCOTUS, that's what the Supreme Court is ruling. The 11th Amendment doesn't prevent me from suing the state. In fact, I think the 11th Amendment allows me to sue the state. That's why they didn't put it in the 11th Amendment. That's why they said that the citizens of Florida can't sue Colorado. If Colorado injures me, I get to sue Colorado. I think the 11th Amendment actually allows me to do so. But the Supreme Court has extended the 11th Amendment to not just be citizens of Florida, citizens of Canada, but also citizens of Colorado. The citizen of the states cannot sue their state. Now, there's several ways they've gotten around this. There's several exemptions, but that's the law of the land. That's the law of America, right? Free speech, right to bear arms, right to, not let soldiers come into your house. Whole bunch of rights and freedoms. And now the 11th freedom is to give the state freedom, and then you become a slave. It's to allow the state to have sovereign immunity, state immunity, meaning they get away with every fucking thing. No, you can't sue us no matter what we do to you. Why? Suing is non-violent, so if you don't allow peaceful protest or peaceful resistance, then violent revolution, it's JFK. So essentially, you exhaust all these peaceful options. Well, you're kind of forcing people, if, the injury is large enough, to stand up in a way that, the state will not like. There's several exceptions. There's 9 recognized exceptions. I've recognized these exemptions, and how long have I gone? So I'll read these off, and I probably should just start with these. So, because this is how you can get away, around the fucking law. But SCOTUS has extended the 11th Amendment to mean state immunity just across the board. And the way that you can get around it, you could sue the state officials in their own name. So you can force them to comply with federal law. You can't sue the state itself, but you could sue the individual person. Then it also says that the Congress can abrogate or remove a state's immunity from suit in federal court, provided that Congress's intention to abrogate a state's immunity is unmistakably clear. So if Congress passes a law that says it's absolutely clear that the states do not have immunity on this, then it somehow can get through. A state can always consent to a lawsuit brought against it in federal court. What state would consent to, hey, you want to be sued? Yes. Yes, bring it on. Let's see it. And that's actually how a lot of these states have gotten away with this shit, by not, going to the court. They're called to court, they don't show up, and then the court's like, well, did we even really have a right to call them up anyways? A state can always consent to a lawsuit being brought against it in federal court, so they could consent to it. A lawsuit could be brought in federal court against the state's subdivisions, such as counties, cities, and municipalities. So counties, cities, villages, towns. So you can't sue, I can't sue Colorado. So if the road department runs over my grandmother's legs, I could sue the county, I could sue the city, and I could sue the village, I could sue the water district. Whatever municipality I could find that happened in that jurisdiction, I could somehow tie it to the county, city. But if it's the state worker, or is it, a local place and they're getting some local money, if they're getting some local funds, then that allows me to sue that, local. So what can I do? I can't sue Colorado. Colorado, broke my grandmother's legs, ran over it, the road department did. And now I don't know what to do about it. They're not paying the medical bills, and she needs money, and it's piling up. There's also, suits by other states. And suits by the United States to enforce federal laws are permitted. It's kind of a loophole. So if you get your own state or the U.S. government to take your case on for you, like getting the state or the federal attorney general to defend your case. So I could tell the attorney general of, Colorado or America. So since I can't sue Colorado, then, perhaps I could get the attorney general of the United States to sue Colorado, or I could get the attorney general of Colorado to, stand up for what's right and to go against, case law. I don't know. It's, if you can't sue, let's see. There's essentially, you can't sue, right? Tennessee injures me, then I'm not allowed to sue Tennessee, but perhaps I could get the attorney general of Colorado or Tennessee or America to sue Tennessee, so I could get the state or the United States to sue. So the citizen can't do it, but the state or the federal government can sue. So that's a kind of loophole. That seems like that would be a lot harder, but I think that's an option, right? Hey, why don't you call the Attorney General? What's the worst he could say? No. There's a 14th Amendment exemption. So in Fitzpatrick v. Bitzer, it's a 1976 case, Fitzpatrick v. Bitzer. The 14th Amendment exemption limited Congress's ability to subject states to suit in federal court unless Congress acts pursuant to its power to enforce the 14th Amendment. So essentially, they're saying that states can't be sued. They cannot go to the federal government. The states can't be sued by citizens of, other states or other countries. And so if the states can't be sued, well then how does the federal government, force the state to comply? And the 14th Amendment is peculiar, but it's interesting how the federal courts argue their way into power. And they say the federal courts, the 14th Amendment is for due process. So you get the due process clause, so everybody gets the same rights, everybody across the board. No matter where you're at, if you're an American, you're born in America, then you get the same due process rights. So the Fourth Amendment, they call it it's the Equal Protection Clause. So since we all get the equal protection under the law, that means that the freedoms that were guaranteed under the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, right to petition, right to bear arms, all of those freedoms are protected by the 14th Amendment. So even though it didn't say that, the First Amendment, meaning freedom of speech, and all states must abide by freedom of speech, the 14th Amendment due process clause says because it's procedural and the states it's equal protection. So since the freedom of speech is part of federal American law, then the 14th Amendment says that you must have equal protection of that law in all of the states. So it's not America saying, hey, Georgia, you must abide by freedom of speech. It's America saying, hey, Georgia, you must abide by equal protection and due process for, everybody. And also, we do have the freedom of speech, so that's part of the package, right? That's American rights, it's human rights, and so they're saying the equal protection clause means that they get to enforce all the rights and freedoms of the Constitution, including, so that's why a lot of times the federal courts will hear freedom of speech cases. Instead of having the state courts decided, it goes to the federal court. So that's essentially just how they expand their power. The national government, I feel like just national government doing national shit, they got, so much power, the state has so much power. There is a separation between the two. It's not exactly clear to me what power the state has versus the federal government. The federal government can only claim powers that is given to it in the Constitution specifically, but there's also, implied powers, which is, they're implying power with the 11th Amendment, which isn't even power that they should be implying. They're implying shit that, shouldn't even be there. So there's a 14th Amendment exemption. There's a bankruptcy exemption. So that's a federal law, the bankruptcy thing, the 14th Amendment due process. So Fitzpatrick v. Bitzer, 1976, that's the 14th Amendment exemption. In Central Virginia Community College v. Katz, that's 2006 case. That's a bankruptcy exemption. So it's for some bankruptcy issues. That's federal law. There's also a Superfund exemption in Pennsylvania v. Union Gas Company in 1989. The Superfund Act canceled the 11th Amendment. So in order to enforce the Superfund Act, apparently the federal government could sue, or citizens could sue the state. There wasn't state immunity, because if the federal government's suing the state, well, how's that? That's state immunity, right? Federal gets, federal immunity, state immunity. Nobody could sue anybody. They both get away with everything. No, they don't like that. They need it, we need to sue each other. The federal court's removal jurisdiction exemption, I don't know exactly what that even means, but that's in Lapides v. Board of Regents of the University System of Georgia, I think, GA. 2002, the federal court's removal jurisdiction exemption. I'm not for sure exactly what that is, but there's 9 ways to get away, to get out of that. So what would I do with my grandma? So my grandma got run over by the government's reindeer, broke her legs, and now we need to, get her bills paid. The state's not coughing up the money. It's clearly their fault. But what can we do about it? Can we convince the cops to start arresting people? Can we arrest the road worker? Can we sue the road worker? And yeah, we can sue the road worker himself, specifically, the private person. So that's how they've forced states to comply, is they'll sue the governor, not as the governor of Colorado. They would sue Jared Polis as a private citizen. And that's so crazy. So you can't sue the state, but you can sue the people who run the state, which really they are the state. So it's like we're protecting this made-up nation-state fiction, the social construction. We're going to give this social construction complete immunity, and we're just going to slap all the responsibility and accountability upon living, breathing human beings, because, you can make them people pay. So, yeah. The 11th Amendment is a crock of shit. When I think about states' rights versus government, federal government, we have a federalist system, so we got two governments that we have to abide by, and they both want all the fucking power, right? And so the federal government actually turns out to be a pretty good saving government when it comes to protecting freedoms in the court system, because they're protecting the Bill of Rights for all the states, and if the states aren't doing a good job of protecting the Bill of Rights, then the federal government, so they actually turn out to be a good force. But sometimes their powers run concurrent, so their oppressive powers are concurrent. So the freedoms and rights. You also have, the state governments and the local courts can respect all the, the U.S. Constitution, all the laws of the federal code too. So they can enforce, their own state and local code. I'm pretty sure they could do something with the federal, right to free speech. I'm pretty sure they could stand up for, the United States Bill of Rights. So, because the way I understand Colorado law is that it's both the federal and state constitution and the federal and state code. So is Maine and Ohio, Texas, Colorado, are they France, India, Brazil, Australia? I don't know. I think that's a good thing to think about. It's a good thing to just sort of wonder about. If France, India, and Brazil, they're their own, nation-state countries, so they're clearly autonomous. They're not part of a United States. That's the whole point of being part of a United States. It is a club. We should be able to voluntarily leave a club. So it is kind of crazy that if you did try to secede out of America, technically, the federal government could just start killing everybody. But ultimately, I think that you could just say, "Hey, I don't want to do this whole America thing. Nah, we're just going to be Colorado for a while. We're just going to do us." So rest of America, y'all figure your shit out. We just going to do Colorado. So it's we have a federal system. So I just essentially assume I have two masters. I got two masters. I got two governments. I got to listen to the state government of Colorado, and I got to listen to the federal government. And really, I don't like anybody telling me what to do. So automatically, I'm kind of against this whole premise that they get to tell me what to do. I believe that the local government is, that's the place where democracy actually begins. And the people at the local, positions are the most powerful, then the state, then the feds. Not the opposite. And, there's actually just different categories. So it's not clear. The federal government isn't more powerful than the state, or the state isn't more powerful than the feds. They're just powerful in different ways. So the Fed tries to take the commerce. They want to regulate the commerce. They want the bankruptcy things. They got the post offices, right? And what was the other thing that they mentioned? 14th Amendment. So they protect all the, rights and freedoms. They protect the Bill of Rights. So that's the power that the federal government has been able to grab a hold of. But, the state government can really do a lot of that stuff. Instead of interstate commerce, you could do interstate commerce. But anyways, I've talked long enough. The 11th Amendment is a crock of shit. It should never have been passed. We need to rewrite it, get rid of it altogether, or just cross out the part that says that citizens from other states can't sue those states. I live in Colorado. If Tennessee injures me, I should be allowed to sue Tennessee. If Washington or Oregon or Montana sues me, I should be allowed to sue those states. So cross that part out. You can keep the fact that Australians can't sue the state. That's fine. Australia can't sue our state. I'm okay with that. Australia cannot force our courts to listen to one of their grievances. And, if there's an international thing, then we'll have to talk about that. But for now, that's the progressive way to do it. So either get rid of the 11th Amendment, it's just too damn complicated and it's not specific, or just add a 27th Amendment, and the 27th Amendment undoes the, prohibition of citizens being allowed to sue the other 49 states in the Union. You live in that state? Well, that means you can't sue any other states. You can only sue that one. Well, actually now the Supreme Court says you can't even sue that one. So, yeah, they definitely need to cut that part out. And actually maybe even add a part that says citizens can now sue their states and other states. Now it's a total, it'll be a free-for-all. So, throw out the bullshit, frivolous cases, but the serious cases, the cases that have merit, those need to stay. Anyways, John Masters, thanks be to God. Something.